Well, cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers. That's good. So we're drinking an R&R coconut IPA from Stone Brewing Company. And I'm talking with Greg Koch, who's the president, the CEO, the president? CEO, that's right.
Co-founder, CEO.
Co-founder is probably the most exciting part to me because Greg and his partner Steve are what made Stone Brewing Company happen, and that made me, among many, many other people, very, very happy.
Me too.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good. So I've had the opportunity to spend some time with Stone and the management team and kind of see some of the inside operations. And I asked Greg if he would sit down and talk with me, because I know that as managers and upper management, there are some things that I think you would be really inspired to hear from Greg. And the success that Stone has achieved and it continues to achieve, I think, shows that his ideas have some validity. So this is a guy worth listening to with some really inspirational things for you. So I just asked him if he'd have a conversation with us about management and leadership and awesomeness, because that's, I think, your leadership philosophy. So Greg, thank you for taking time to talk with me and talk with us.
My pleasure. You promised beers, so.
I did, yes, there you go. And good beer.
I provided it.
Yeah. Yeah, good beer too. Really good beer. So Greg, you know, I think my first question would be something along the lines of, you are perhaps non-traditional. So when we're talking to management at large corporations, you know, they're in a maybe more traditional company than you, maybe really large and a lot larger. But what would you say to people? What would you tell them in a company like that? That would empower them in their position?
Well, I'd ask them, is it painful?
Probably shouldn't ask that, right? Anyway.
Look, the world is continuing to move more and more towards celebrating celebrating uniqueness. A few decades ago, uniqueness was, you know, we were expected to moderate it down. We were expected to, you know, dress in a more uniform way in business with suits and whatnot. But, you know, it's actually been a many decade long transition towards now. The focus just isn't on that. The focus is a lot more on what you do. And even today, a lot of very successful business people. You know, that the guy from Virgin is coming to mind.
Richard Branson.
Thank you.
Our pal Richard.
You know, he's a good example of somebody that clearly just does their own thing, right?
Yeah.
It really, I think that, you know, conformity is one. It's a little overrated. What would I say to somebody like that? I actually don't know what to say. I'd say, you know, we got to all find out, you know, how to go our own way.
Yeah.
And if it feels like that's your way, then that's the way you should go.
So here, let me, you know, it wasn't really a fair question. Let me give you some context.
Okay.
Because one of my experiences being in Central Europe, in particular in Bratislava, but in general in Europe, in the places where I've ended up at some of these co-working spaces and with the entrepreneurial side of Telefonica and all of that, I think that there is a real excitement about bringing entrepreneurial approaches to big businesses. So I really think that although that conformity and there's things that you just have to do when you're in a big company like that may not be changing as rapidly as people might like them to, a lot is changing. So let's say that you were talking to managers and upper management that were willing to have the guts to have a vision and were willing to step out of the normal a little bit and do something that was somewhat, maybe even risky.
Sure.
but excited about what they were contributing to the company. How can they make it better?
I was actually just recently asked to speak, and I gave a talk to about 150 senior management at San Diego Gas and Electric. So it's a big power provider in both gas and electric. And it is a very conservative company, and they wanted me to talk about this exact same subject matter. And what when I said to them, and what I'd say to you is, on this earth, we have a responsibility, not just to ourselves, but to the people we work with and the people who we do business with, and then I think just the general populace. We have a responsibility to do our best work. So, on its surface, that's very simple. It's an easy thing to say, but what does that actually look like? What does your best work look like? And I think that if we were to honestly sit down just with a pad and pen, and without thinking whether or not somebody might be looking over our shoulder and answer that question, we'd come up with some very honest, straightforward, and maybe not all that complicated answers. So what does that look like? Now, this is going to sound simplified. Do that.
Great.
Do that. Don't discuss it. Come to committee meetings about it. Okay. A very common thing is, okay, well, that's what I believe, but what I think everybody else believes is over here, so I should probably mitigate what I believe and modify it to be more what I think people are ready for. To heck with what people are ready for. It's not up to you to decide what people are ready for. It's up to you to decide what is your best work. What's your best work? That's the only choice. That's the only thing you get to decide. What's your best work? What does that look like? Do that.
Okay, that's a perfect answer, because now I'd like you to give us a little bit of flavor and a little bit of insight into what that looked like for you and Steve to get from the very beginning, when that's what you did, is we want to make something we think is great and do it the way we think it should be done, forget what anybody else is doing. So tell us a little bit, give us a little flavor of how that looked and where it took you and where you are now.
Sure. Well, it's very easy to say. It's hard to do. So you can, these platitudes, these comments that just do your best work. Sometimes it takes us a while to figure out exactly what that is. And at Stone, it took us, we're still learning 17, almost 18 years into it. It doesn't always require that light bulb to just turn on bright over your head.
Right.
For the clouds to part and the ray of sunshine to shine and say, now I know exactly what my mission is, right? That may be a little much to expect.
Yeah. Be
right?
nice, God, but not going to happen.
Whatever that inspiration, whatever your inspiration, your divine inspiration, if it is, happens to be. So you just got to put one foot in front of the other, right? And so in the case of Stone, that's what we did. We believed in great beer. Now, everybody else said that they, in the beer industry, they always say they believe in great beer. But you taste the beer and it's greatness and what they do, there's clearly a divide. So do they really believe it? Maybe they are making a very, a great version of mediocrity. I'm not sure how you define that, other than what I just, it doesn't quite make sense to me. So what if you did it the way that you felt was great, instead of the way that you thought that other people would still buy it, right? Because I think that's what most major companies want to do. They want to do things that they think people will buy, instead of doing things that they believe are great. Now, I know I'm repeating myself here, but it bears repeating, because every time I talk to somebody about this who's in a position to do actually great things within their field, they always give me all these reasons why they can't. Yes, but Greg, you don't understand this business. People want this, and so this will be the side that represents the mediocrity and what the public or the masses think they want, and this side represents true greatness, right?
Yeah,
so
I'm
you think
move.
You have to do it. Yeah, no, I'm not pointing at you. You just need to sit over here on the
There
side
you
of True
go.
Greatness.
There you go.
So when we stop focusing on what we think we're supposed to do or what we think somebody else might think that maybe they might want, right? It's always hard to figure out.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure I just understood that sentence I said.
Yeah, but that's what it's like trying to figure out what other people think
Yeah.
they want or
Yeah.
whatever.
So we were an entrepreneurial company. It started with my partner Steve and I in 1996. We had just enough money to open our doors. We didn't have any advertising. We've never advertised in our 18 years. We've never discounted our beer. We've only made reasonably expensive beer and not just high quality, because quality can be thrown around a lot. But we made very, very flavorful beer, intense, more bitter than most people liked, right? And it's not a popular taste. A lot of it's a lot darker than this. It's very strong. This one is nearly 7% alcohol by volume. It's also quite bitter, but it's got a lot of flavor, etc. So that is a shorter term, more difficult way to go. Longer term, more successful way to go.
Right.
And in a public company, who's always chasing the quarterly numbers in order for stock prices and for bonuses and things like that. That's a difficult setting to do greatness. It's a setting that's not it's not well suited.
It's not conducive.
It's not conducive for doing greatness. So you have to. It's a lot of swimming upstream.
Yeah. So there's some swimming upstream. There's some challenge to it.
And of course, my company, we want to foster greatness, and we want to do all these wonderful, and we want to go on our own way, and we're doing a pretty good job. We still have to swim upstream. It doesn't become easy.
Yeah.
But granted, in a large company, it's going to be even more difficult.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's kind of a theme for me is whether it's easy or not, it is simple and it's worth doing. That's the other question. Is it worth doing? Well, what kind of life do you want to live, right? So it's simple. It's not easy. It's worth doing. And it's interesting because you say that you haven't ever done advertising, and yet Stone's growing leaps and bounds every year. Every year it's like, okay, the news story is growth. We just grew a whole bunch. Okay, last year we grew a lot, and next year we're going to grow even more. Hey, welcome.
So in 2013 we grew only about 30%.
Only.
And our 18-year average is above 45%.
Wow.
45% a year on average.
For how many years?
18 years.
Wow, right?
Private company, completely owned by myself and my partner.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic.
And now almost 900 employees.
Yeah. So one thing that I hear in that is something that has kind of been a theme of mine for a long time is the best advertising is a great product. Because the advertising that works is word of mouth. All the rest of it's just reinforcement. But if you don't hear about something from someone or hear that it's great, then all the reinforcement doesn't mean as much. And I think if you really do a super great product, people just tell each other about it.
Or as I like to say, my very simple adage is, if you want people to talk about what you do, you simply need to do things that are worth talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
And of course, as we know, most commercial products have a little bit of differentiation and a lot of talk.
Yeah.
Right? That they try and via advertising, right? Promotions and all these kinds of things. So they work very hard at trying to convince people that there's a difference that is really maybe not quite there.
Yeah. Yeah. So what, let's say in your organization, let's say that I'm working at Stone and I have an idea for something I think could be better, or I see something that I'm like, wow, okay, we could amp this up and make people even more happy. We could be more awesome. What do you tell your employees? I think that this could be good advice anywhere you are, maybe more difficult in the quarterly earnings driven corporate world, but what would you say to someone like that in your organization?
Well, we say, what I said already of strive for excellence, try to do things that you believe are great.
Yeah.
I also tell folks to be willing to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will be the first to admit, even in a company that is clearly breaking the mold in many ways and always has,
Mm-hmm.
this is still something very difficult. People, by their nature, are conservative.
Yeah.
They don't want to take individual risk.
Yes.
They don't want to do something that will turn out bad. I get that. I don't either.
Yeah, no, none of us do.
I don't like to do things that turn out bad. I don't like to make mistakes. But the willingness to risk is a hard thing to teach. And I don't think I have that yet. I saw author and kind of marketing guru Seth Godin speak not too long ago.
Uh-huh.
And during a Q&A session, I asked him a question. I kind of asked him this. I said, how do I continue the innovation of my company? As a company, we're innovative, but as individuals within the company, frankly, there's a lot of status quo that goes on. There's a lot of, and he said, set up an expectation for mistakes.
Yeah.
With the management team. If you're not making mistakes, even you could set up a mistake quota.
Yeah. Yeah. Go make 10 mistakes.
Go make 10 mistakes. Yeah. But really, what's the true message? Go try 10 things that you truly believe in, that you think are great. Mm. And I will, as your manager or boss or whatever, I will accept that if some of those turn out in hindsight are clearly mistakes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, it's not like you're trying to make a mistake, but you have to be willing to risk a mistake.
Yeah.
And, for me, I'm willing actually, I'm not that willing to risk. See, it's easy to say, hard to do. I'm not that willing to risk. So at Stone, we've had all this meteoric growth. We've had a lot of things. We have never had a major mistake. Mm-hmm. I've had lots of small ones, but nothing of any true importance, which is scary.
Yeah, right.
Because, of course, you know what that means.
What does it mean?
It means that our biggest mistake is still in front of us.
There you go. Which,
our biggest mistake is not behind us.
Yeah.
Which almost, I'm not sure how that makes me feel.
Exactly.
Right? So, I'm not going to suggest for one moment that this is not a challenging thing to force yourself to adopt and just go for it. Now, try and make a $500 mistake instead of a $5,000 or a $50,000 mistake,
sure.
Right? Or whatever the appropriate translation and dollar value. What's the dollar to the Bratislavan?
Well, they're euros.
Oh, they're euros. So. Okay. Well, we know what that is.
Yeah. So here's a question. Are you willing to tell us one of your mistakes, one of your Greg's personal mistakes?
Sure,
Can
but
you think of a good one?
They're not that spectacular.
Well,
it's not that great a story. I don't really have any good stories, to be honest with you. One of the early mistakes that we made at Stone, when we started out, as I already told you, we were making big character beer that was very different from the beers on the market. Mm-hmm. We were struggling with getting critical mass of volume. Mm-hmm. Volume was low. Popularity and volume was growing, but it was at such a level that our costs were here and our revenues were here, right? Mm-hmm. Very upside down. So we desperately needed volume to get that critical mass to turn the tide.
Yeah.
And we decided to come out with a beer that we didn't really believe in that much. Mm-hmm. It was a wheat beer that we tried to make more accessible. I wasn't personally excited about it.
The accessible Stone beer.
It was a bit of a to say, a Hail Mary, a desperate attempt.
Right.
And it didn't work. Why? We were only a year and a half old at that time, but already people were beginning to associate the name Stone was something that was more unique, more aggressive, more flavorful.
Yeah.
So the people who did gravitate to what we were doing, this beer didn't interest them. The people who we were trying to sort of convince over from the more what we call fizzy yellow beer, the industrial side, the commodity side, the generic side, the typical side. The people that we were hoping might, well, they were buying beers supported by ad campaigns and a lot of marketing, and we didn't have that muscle. So there was no way we were going to convince them either.
Yeah.
And so basically we ended up with nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that is a mistake. That's a pretty interesting mistake. And I think what I'm hearing underneath that's even more interesting, and this is maybe a reason to be willing to make mistakes, is what did you learn from that mistake?
Yeah.
And I think you just kind of told us, but if you want to cap it.
Reinforce to be true to ourselves, do the things that we truly believed in. Don't try to be something that you're not, and don't try to go after the masses.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I've always loved this quote. So there's this band called Metallica. You may have heard of them.
Probably.
Pretty big metal band.
Yeah.
Now, in 1980, Metallica came out with their, not 1980, 1990, Metallica came out with their Black Album. And, 1991. You were going to call me on that. You were going to let me get away with it.
No one.
1991.
Yes.
Forgive my mistake. Came out with a Black Album. And Music Magazine put them on the cover with a caption that I've always remembered.
Uh-huh.
And the caption on the cover of the Music Magazine read, Metallica didn't go to number one. Number one came to them.
That's great.
That was
really
extremely illustrative because...
I like the...
exactly, the reinforcement.
Reinforcement, yes.
It was extremely illustrative because you may not know it, but Metallica is one of only 2 American bands, 2, to ever have 5 number 1 albums in the United States.
You mean the Beatles and Metallica?
No,
I'm kidding. That was a joke. So say it again. They're only one of 2 that
American bands to have 5 number 1 albums.
Wow.
Now, whenever I give a talk, and sometimes I'll mention this, and I'll ask people to, are you a Metallica fan? Raise your hand. It depends. And you know what I found interesting is that at San Diego Gas and Electric talk I gave for the senior executives.
Yeah.
There was about 35% roughly that raised their hands.
Wow, Metallica
so you
fans.
Yeah, exactly.
How many of you are Metallica fans?
That was
interesting.
Interesting,
yeah.
So these are clearly people that like something that's loud, brash, unique, all this kind of thing. But so then I ask a question: how many people in the audience think that all the people that Metallica cares one single bit about all the people that didn't raise their hand? No, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
They don't.
And
you know what? That's your management lesson right there.
Yeah.
They shouldn't care about them.
Yeah.
They should care about the 35% that did raise their hand.
Yes. Yeah.
That's who you care about.
That's really great. And I remember, I've heard you say that somewhere else, and I remember being really struck by it. And I think it's really great you said it here, because that's absolutely right. That's Greg Koch, folks. I mean,
So and going back to that mistake that I was talking about that we made, even though it was still very young in our lives, as a business, we made a beer not for our fans or our growing fan base, but we made a beer for somebody else.
Yeah.
So it turned out we made a beer for 2 sets of people that didn't care about it. Our fans didn't care about it because we didn't make it for them, which we were included in that category.
Yeah.
And the non-fans didn't care about it because we're Metallica and they didn't care about Metallica, right?
Yeah.
So it was a shot in the wrong direction.
Yeah. So not your biggest mistake ever, but a great lesson.
Yeah, but like I said, we haven't had a lot of big mistakes.
Yeah.
We haven't had enough mistakes.
Yeah.
It means we're
Well,
not
okay,
trying.
you're not trying hard enough.
I know, it means we're not trying hard
Greg.
enough. Here I am. It's easy to, practice what you preach.
Exactly. All right.
Listen to what I say, not what I do.
Yeah, well, Greg's having his come to Jesus moment here. We're going to start seeing some more exciting things, I think.
I'm working on that, as a matter of fact.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. So,
Damn it, I'm going to have one of my biggest mistakes in 2014.
all right, good. Awesome. Great. I look forward to that. That'll be exciting.
Yeah,
So-
and maybe I'll look at this tape in a year and say to myself,
Wish
what
I
was
wouldn't
I
have
thinking?
said that. So, all right, good. Well, so who are some of, besides Metallica and that great cover, which I think is truly awesome, who are some of the other people that influence you? Maybe Richard Branson. Who are some of the other people that you look at and listen to? I mean, I know I have a few people who gave me great advice. Like I got some quote. I could tell you some of the things that people told me on my way through business that I will never forget, and that made a big difference. What are you? You probably have some of those.
Not too many.
Okay.
I've never paid that much attention to the business gurus or the business books and all of this. I think inspirational quotes are all fun. You can read inspirational quotes all day.
Sure.
And but if I was going to mention two, I would mention Seth Godin is one. Mm-hmm. Seth Godin is merely the author, I think, who is the best at putting in writing what I already do and the way I already think.
Yeah.
So I use his material more often to give to somebody, say, here, this explains what I'm trying to talk about.
Yeah.
Because he's a great author and he just does a better job than I do at conveying it.
Yeah. Great.
And then I think in many ways Steve Jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was going to quote something, I would share the quote, which I may not do perfectly, but you get the point. Is people don't know what they want until you show it to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you can go all the way back to the historical Henry Ford quote, which was, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Right. Pretty great.
So again, he goes all the way back to what I was talking at the beginning. Do what you believe in, do what you think is great work, not what people think they want. Mm-hmm. And
That's
both
really
those
great.
quotes and both those people, those leaders, go back to that.
Yeah, that's great. Good. Well, is there anything else that you want to leave us with? Anything, of any kind?
So let's look at what we're a part of here in the United States, and frankly, beyond the United States, really in the world today. We are engaged in a period of a return to normalcy. So if you were going to take so many of our food and beverage products of today and go back in a time machine 250 years, and you were to bring the beer of today, some of the packaged meats of today, the cheeses of today, the breads of today, etc.
Like say some cheese whiz and some bologna and right?
Exactly. And if you were to take them back to a small town, 250, and set up shop to sell these things, the pastries, or I think that in 24 hours you'd be run out of town, tarred and feathered.
Yeah. What are you trying to?
What are you trying to sell us?
Yeah.
People would be angry. People would be angry.
Yeah.
And so now we're moving back. It's a very different scenario because a lot of us, in our generations, we grew up with the stuff
Yeah.
that, we don't know enough to be angry.
Exactly.
But we're learning. And as the real version is presented to us, people react with oh my God, I had no idea it could be like this.
Yeah.
I just thought it was, the stuff on this side, right? The mediocre side.
Totally. Yep.
And I didn't realize that this side over here even existed. Thank you very much for creating this. I am now a fan. I am now a customer. I am now, going to buy the next Metallica CD or, whatever, right?
Yes,
That's the analogy.
The next Stone beer in my
the
case.
next.
Yeah.
So participate. There's a lot of future in participating in this sort of revolution, and this revolution is really just going back to this, returning to this normalcy, back to a time where we actually recognize the things for what they are. The cheeses are being made with authentic artisanal processes. The breads are made with, simple list of ingredients, 1, 2, 3, 4 ingredients,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So that's so interesting. And I love that. And I really do genuinely appreciate what you and Stone are doing in that realm. I'm so happy. I'm one of those people that's like, wow, thank you for doing this. And to loop it back to the people that we're talking to here, what does that look like in your business? We didn't have cell phones 250 years ago. But what does it look like in the products that you offer and in the way you treat your customers?
What if every single decision you made was focused on making it easy for your customers to understand and do it the right way? So, for example, I could think of in cell phones. When I call somebody to leave them a voicemail message, I listen to their outgoing message, and then I listen to the automatic systems message, again, telling me the same thing.
Yeah.
I've known what to do at the sound of the tone for 30 years. I don't need this explained to me anymore.
Yeah.
Frankly, it just pisses
So
me
funny,
off.
yeah.
Really.
And
What button do I push to bypass that so I don't have to listen to it
But
again?
are you always sure of who you've called?
I'm talking about the automatic system message.
Okay, right. Okay, good.
The automatic system where it says press 1 for this, press 2 for that, right?
But you're making me feel silly for even
But
saying.
do you is that a revenue model? Because that few seconds, because it's somebody's on the phone for a few seconds more, is it a revenue model? Are you respecting your customer? Make a choice. So what if you looked at a model that made everything easy to understand for the customer? You didn't have hidden charges. You didn't have, because on paper, these things look really, really good.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, it'll increase our revenue.
Exactly, because it's a half a cent per customer, and multiplied by millions of customers, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of calls, all this kind of thing. It makes a difference to the bottom line. But when you're competing with your competitors in the marketplace, is that really the best way to compete? That's the way all your competitors think is the best way to compete.
And you're exactly making me think about what we talked about earlier,
What's that right way? What's the best way to do it?
Yeah.
And so some of it's the way we think we're supposed to do it, or the way we think we have to do it. But really, what's the way we should do it if we're going to make amazing decisions for ourselves, for the company, and for the customers? What would that look like? And usually when you make it for the customer, it is the right decision for the company. And when it's the right decision for the company, it is the right decision for you as an employee in the company, right?
Yeah.
So these things are looked at as decisions you can't afford to make, you shouldn't make. But when you're bold enough, then all of a sudden customers say, I want you to be my cell phone company.
Yeah.
Because I like being able to, understand everything, not have my time wasted, not be nickeled and dimed, or pennied
and euroed.
Yeah, exactly.
Scented and euroed.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it makes me think about Stone not ever advertising, because you really made something that was worth talking about.
Yeah.
And people did, and that's all you need.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Well, good. So it's been really great talking with you. Thanks for the sharing some time and some R&R coconut IPA.
Just a little bit more left here.
All right, good.
Cheers.
So cheers.